Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Duty Honor Real Estate Podcast, episode 14, with a very special guest, Chasity Rosales. Thank you so much for coming on today, and let's get right into it. I mean, you have served and still serving over 20 years in the Army Reserves. Let's talk about this.
Almost 28 years now.
Okay, who's counting?
Yeah, I know. Me and my husband, for sure. He wants me to retire, but it's been amazing. It's crazy. It's amazing. I love it still. I told Jim that I'm going to continue to do it while I enjoy it. It costs me money. Let's be real. At this point, it costs me money. But he's like, when are you going to retire? I'm like, when it's no longer fun. So I'm still having fun.
No, that's awesome. And thanks for your service. Thanks for your husband's service. You're a sergeant major.
Yep.
So I imagine that responsibility, weighs on you because you're still actively serving as a real estate professional. So let's talk a little bit about, because usually on the podcast, we have people who finish their military career. And this is the first one where they're still serving. So how do you balance like the experiences you're learning in the reserves and then actually learning as a real estate professional? I mean, they blend together. They probably support each other. Talk about that.
Yeah. One of our passions for our team is helping military families build wealth through real estate. And so that's where they interlock. I tell all my soldiers and any military member that I come in contact the power of the VA loan and using that to build real estate. On the serving side, how I'm able to do that, because as a sergeant major, it's not part-time. We're not one time a month. I mean, I was on the call yesterday with dealing with a soldier issue, but not an issue. I call them help. They're obstacles, and we help them. But I couldn't do that without leverage. Yesterday at you all's amazing Elevate event, we talked about building a team and what that looked like through leverage. Leverage through systems and people. That's how I'm able to serve in that capacity and go do that and still work in our real estate team as a high level.
Now, one, thank you for emphasizing the power of the VA. It's one of those things where while you're in your career, you kind of forget the benefits that you deserve, that you earned. And so it's really cool to see that you put that wealth involved, because we think about retirement, we think about that end state, but really there's more to it. And so it's great that you remind the audience that there is a power of the VA and that it's benefits you deserve. Now, one thing you hit on that I love is leverage. In the Army, we have that hierarchy system. We have the NCO Corps, and I love it how you literally take something that you do for over 28 years and you can quickly apply it to your business. That's incredible. And what I know about you is that you're very client-centric. Mm-hmm. And so, you said it right there, even when you're dealing with soldier challenges, right? It's help.
Yeah.
So how do you take that value that you're talking about in your client-centric approach with leverage?
So we have an admin team and an ops team, and they are our leverage. Our transaction coordinators do everything contract to close. So they are with the agent as a partner, they're the facing to the client to help them get from contract to close. So they are continually moving that file so the agent can do what's most important for the client, and that's protect their asset.
Wow. It's really cool because they don't understand like that asset that they get. Like when they get a professional like you who's literally not only talking about the transactions but after with the asset management, it's incredible to see that. Now, you being a sergeant major, there's a lot of challenges that happen, over time with the units you're in or whatever the case. But there's also a lot of challenges in real estate that happen. And so given your leadership background, how have you overcome or engaged these challenges in the consumer world, right?
I think we have an edge up on a normal real estate agent. When I say normal, non-military, because we have the Army has the most amazing leadership schools in the United States, or in the world, actually. Yeah. And so I think that gives us an advantage, both officer and NCOs, to tackle those kind of challenges that we face, like in real estate. Because really what we are real estate professionals are advisors and problem solvers. And we learn really quick how to adapt and overcome in the military. And so every day we're solving problems. We usually don't have the resources we need to do our mission. So you're always problem solving to make that happen, which is the same approach we take in real estate. The old saying, don't tell me no, tell me how. And so when I am negotiating for my client, that is the approach I take with the other agent. Not in a way that they're not going to work with me, but in a way that they help me work for my client.
Wow. No, I love that. Can you say that coined line again?
Oh, don't tell me no, tell me how.
Tell me how.
I think that's mostly on the NCO side, the old Sergeant Major, that the old ones when I was a young soldier serving, that would be, Clark was my name then, and they were Clark, don't tell me no, tell me how. And so that's how they teach you to solve problems. There's rarely a no in anything we do in life.
Yeah, I usually tell that to the lender.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly.
Hey, we tell it to the vendors, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we as real estate professionals, we're responsible.
That's right.
And it's like, as a leader in the Army, at the end of the day, you're still responsible for the operation.
That's right.
And so that's great to have that mentality. But you take it even further, not only supporting them from a transaction and asset management, but you have a lot of community engagement in El Paso, Texas. Talk about how you continue to serve not only in real estate, but also in the community.
We have a saying that our client profile does not end there at the closing. It actually just begins our relationship with them. Because one, we are watching for things that happen. Let's take two important things right now. One is interest rate. So we watch when interest rate drops. If interest rate drops enough that it's beneficial for our military families to refinance, we are calling them and we're texting them and we're emailing them and saying, hey, you bought in a time that you probably have a high 7 or 8%. Now is the time, which we just had 2 military families save $300, $400 a month on a payment, which is significant for military families. What other agent is doing that for them? Who cares about their interest rate after they get their commission check? That's the question we need to ask when we're interviewing people. What are the systems that serve me, not just now but later? And also homestead exemption. Our property tax is high in El Paso, so if they're not filing their homestead exemption, they're losing money every month. So when we're doing our quarterly client follows up, we are actually going on the tax website while we're calling them to check to see if they filed their homestead exemption. We found 3 this week that has not filed their homestead exemption. And I'm like, why am I bugging you? I've called this one dude 5 times in 6 months. I'm like, why am I begging you to save money at this point? And he just laughs at me, Chasity, I haven't had time. But he finally went and done it. And they can get a refund for the time it was their primary residence. So I tell them how to get their refund. And it's getting time close to Christmas. That'll be nice. So those are the things we look for. And then in the community, everybody on our team is a veteran or a military spouse. That's who we like to hire. Will we hire other people? We will. But we know their work ethic. We know their grit, and especially military spouse. Who's got more grit than them when they move their family so much over time and digging in and deserve a career that can transfer with them? So we teach events in the community. We support military spouses' businesses. We have events like pickleball, Mom's Night Out, baseball games and things where we're actually trying to help them build a tribe. Nothing more than that. Like our families move here, they don't have any friends, so we try to get them out the house behind social media to say, hey, you got to build a tribe here. You can't survive as a military spouse in the house with your kids behind social media. And so we do stuff like that.
Man, I love it. I wish I was part of the El Paso community that you're growing.
Well, we can change that.
I know, we're about to. What I hear, though, is a leader that is preemptive, really cares. You're thinking of beyond just that transaction, like you were talking about, really creating that enduring relationship. And so it's really cool to hear that. And if you guys hear that the golden nugget she said is about her homestead exemption follow-up, I mean, that is one you're immediately following up, you're adding value, and they feel that you trust them because you got their back.
Right.
And that's a big deal in the military community is do you watch their 6?
That's right.
And so that's incredible to see that. So it's an easy follow-up especially for all the real estate professionals listening, ways to follow up on time and with value.
Yeah. Another way you can add value right now is we know interest rates dropped. Yeah, the Fed had their meeting yesterday, but they had already been priced in, so we already saw that. So if you are actively serving a buyer right now, military or not, call a lender and say, hey, do you offer a courtesy float down? Because they can drop the interest rate. They can't increase it, but they can drop it. So if they locked them in, we had one soldier that they locked in at a 6.75. I called our lender and I was like, hey, we need to float them down, because they know that's what it takes to work with us. It's about client first. And so they floated them down to a 5.5.
Again, it's that preemptiveness you keep talking about, watching the six, but I also like it because you're holding the industry accountable. And as leaders, you're protecting your consumer, your client, who doesn't know everything. They're not used to, maybe it's a first-time home buyer, but even if it's a veteran buyer or a veteran seller, they just don't know those opportunities that are out there. And the fact that you keep thinking about them, I mean, that shows why you keep having a huge empire in El Paso. One thing you hit on that you talked about grit. And, as I got to know you, there's 3 Ds that are pretty important to you. And tell me if I got it right. Dedicated, determined, and dependable.
Yep.
And those seem to be very important for you in the triple Ds. And so what I want to know is, like, that's probably a mentality that you have, you talked about in your hiring process. And in this podcast, my goal personally is to inspire any veteran, every military spouse, anyone in the community that is concerned what they're going to do after their service. Yep. And give them the confidence to take action, like get into real estate. Obviously, I'm biased with that, but whatever industry. And so since you really determined those values, those triple Ds, could you give some motivation, some advice to veterans? Like, you got that grit that you were talking about.
We do. And I don't think we apply it enough, or we don't talk about it enough. We just like, oh, I was just a 42 Alpha, right, in the Army. Do you know what a 42 Alpha equates to in the civilian world? That's HR supervisors. They make 6 figures. You know what corporations are paying people to run their HR department, which is one of the most important pieces of a corporation and protecting their empire. So just as an example, it's just like taking what you do and translating it. And the military now has amazing resources to help them do so. But speaking about real estate, I got licensed when I was on active duty at JBLM. I said, you know what, I've always wanted to do it. I grew up in the South, which is where those values come from. And we were, everybody in my family was some kind of construction. And I painted houses with my daddy on into summers for $40 a week. And I remember Daddy saying, you can have this house. And he painted all the $1 million houses in Myrtle Beach. But they were divorced, Mom and Dad. And Mom said, get your education. Nobody can take that from you. So I'd already had a master's, that the Army paid for, all the way up at 3 degrees the Army paid for. That's how you milk those resources to build your future. And so, I just said, one of my friends, he was an officer. One of my battle buddies had gotten his license. I was like, I always wanted to do that. And he was like, here, just go online and take it. So I was stationed at JBLM. I was mobilized as a reservist. Jim and the kids were back in El Paso, so that's what I did at night while I was there. And when I got back to Bliss, I got mobilized back there. I was a first sergeant there, and I was like, okay, I'm going to dabble in this while I'm first sergeant. Well, that was a joke on me because I worked like 80 hours a week as a first sergeant. But afterwards, I just was like, this is it. And it was the skills that transferred from the Army to that was just the organization, the follow-up, the problem solving, the leadership. I mean, it all just rolled in. It was like, I can't imagine being new agents with no experience like that and come into this industry. But when we come off the military into this industry, we already leaps and bounds ahead of anybody getting licensed beside us that does not have the same experience. And they use that. You can use that to own the industry and to build something amazing. And especially when you're getting your money from the Army, right? You're getting your retirement. That makes it a lot easy not to be stressed, to really build something and build it right without having to focus on, well, I got to make money while I build it. And then use the Skill Bridge program. Yeah. We got a soldier right now. She's at E5, and she's in the Skill Bridge program. She was actually stationed here in Colorado Springs, because you can go away. You don't have to do Skill Bridge in your where you're stationed. So she got permission to do that, and she came to Bliss, and she works with us. She's getting licensed while she's doing her 6-month Skill Bridge program. How amazing is that? Yeah. Like, you could go work with a real estate team. Do a team, not a brokerage, because you get lost at a brokerage, but you can work with that team and build a business while the Army's paying you. Or any other branch.
No, I mean, if you're listening, you should be taking notes, because there's so many avenues. And I love how you took that initiative. You're like, this is something I wanted to do. You weren't sure if that was going to be a future, but you took action. And what's great is that you can concurrently do that, whether you're active or you're reserved, whatever the case is. And I love that because not everyone retires. Not everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, most likely you could get disability, but not everyone retires. And so you might as well start thinking like, well, what am I going to do after? What am I going to do when I get out? And I love where you're like, hey, let's do it while I'm in there. And you can do that. Yes, there's sometimes positions, overbearing in the military. But I would tell you, you're surrounded by a community that needs help, that needs that real estate professional. One thing that I love that you say is like, I want to talk more about it. I want to talk more about the confidence that the veteran has, and they need to awaken it. And, that gets into a lot of bigger things like the suicide rate and stuff because they get into depression or whatever the case is. But if we can champion that more, so thank you for highlighting that. And really just, being an example of that, of how like you can take action into that. Now, obviously the veteran has their avenues and, they'll get into real estate, but what about those veterans that are in real estate? How could you help them, given that grid, the triple Ds, when they're in real estate and they're growing a team or growing a solo agent? Because you hit it, if you missed the Elevate 2024 here in Colorado Springs, Chasity did a whole keynote about business strategy in real estate. And could you give them a little Costco free sample about those veterans in real estate?
Yeah, I think we go further together. We talked about it, Elevate, and nobody succeeds alone. You have to find your niche first, and you have to find the people that's in that niche, and then follow them, learn from them. Success leaves clues. So you have to study that to build it. You can't just come off and do that blind. It's like anything else. Real estate, I think, is one of the only professions what we can be licensed in 30 days to help somebody buy the most important investment of their life. That's pretty scary. But we owe it to people to learn it, to be good at it. And to do that, you not only have to study the industry, you have to study the people in the industry. And if you're a veteran out there, find your other veterans. And here's the problem, and the sad thing, is just because they're a veteran doesn't mean they care about other veterans and helping other veterans. We see that commonly. They just use that as their tagline to get business. So find one that cares, that's really giving back to your veteran community and protecting their clients and their business, and learn from those folks and implement what they're doing. And you don't have to do it their way. You take what they're doing and you make it yours.
No, I love it. Obviously finding the niche is important, finding kind of like that target segment, because that's probably what you're going to be passionate about. I love what you were talking about, creating that support group. In the military, you do have a chain of command, right? You do have a chain of support. And battle buddies, right? So you take that application, and it's funny, people in our organization at the Lana Rodriguez Group, we have battle buddies that were with us in the military. My XO for years is now my partner agent.
I love it.
And so it's really cool. And that's another tip I would definitely add is that, yes, you are able to, be successful in real estate, but you have all this talent that you've been working with for years. It's free R&D. And you're like, oh, I would go into business with that person. Like if you were my sergeant major, I'd be like, hey, what are you doing after you retire? Because we need to figure out how to make money, how to create a career. And no, that's so cool to see that. But, we talked about so many things about, your military, the values you learn, applicability. But let's just center more about your goals. Like, you're still serving. You have this incredible team in El Paso. What are your goals? Because, your husband, who's your essentially your S3.
He is.
And
that's what he did in the Army.
Running the show. What are your guys' goals for, because we have 2024, we're going to finish strong. The Fed rate is, changing. The supply issues are still there. The consumer's probably still on the fence. Should I sell? Should I buy? Your team's growing. You're growing. Just want to give some aspirations to the people listening about, as a leader, what are you guys thinking in the future?
I told a story yesterday as a team that every day we quit as leaders because we're like, oh, gosh, why do I do this? Why do I do this myself? But I really feel like I've been called to help other people succeed. And I can't run from that, even though I try sometimes. And I'm just like, oh, I just want to sit on the couch with Teddy, my doodle, and not worry about anything. But then you have this little thing back here that says, but there's people that need you. Mm-hmm. They don't have people pouring into them. On the NCO side, at least, we don't always come from a great upbringing, great neighborhoods. Sometimes we have great parents. I had great parents, luckily, but we see a lot of young NCOs that don't, and they come in the Army to get away or to have a different life that they couldn't have where they came from. And so they coming in not knowing that they can do better, and that there's so much more out there for them. Our officer side, you don't see that as much, because if you're going the officer route and you've been pushed to one of these military leadership schools, somebody's teaching you that. It's usually your parents, or they were alumni themselves. So it really is two delineations there between who we are. And so even though I had a master's early on, and my leadership was like, why don't you do direct commission, because I was a mental health, and they were recruiting mental health people in the medical corps then. And I was like, no, it didn't mean the same at that time, because it's different being on the NCO side. It's just different meaning to us. You know what I'm saying. And so I'm like, every young soldier I see, I'm like, you can do this. You can make so much money. You can do better. And it isn't always about the money, but let's face it, money helps us achieve the things we want. We need the money to do that. And so you teach them how to think bigger, and that you can do this. And the Army does not suck. It's a mindset. Yeah. The Army is a vehicle to get to where you want to go. So you got to be strategic in choosing what motors the Army has for you to put in your engine block to say, this is where I'm going with it. But you got to know where you're going. When I came in the Army, I knew where I was going. I wasn't going to college out of high school. I had like a 1.9 GPA. Like, I was not a model student. And I just signed up to recruiter came. I was a cheerleader and a gymnast. And I came home and told Mama I signed up for the Army. She was like, what the hell? You're not going to the Army. And I was like, well, I'm going to the Army. So I didn't have any other choice. But then when I got in, luckily, I had a great leader in the Army, AGR, Sergeant First Class Daniels, and Sergeant First Class Myers. And they were like, this is how you use the Army. Here's all the things you can do. What do you want to be? And I'm like, okay. And they were like, okay, this training, this training, this training, get this training, get this training. And every time there was a training opportunity that fit what I wanted to do, mental health, because I had to, my first degree was fashion. So I blended that with mental health and now real estate. But you take those opportunities and you use it, and you fight like crap to get to where you want to go. And you don't let a bad leader stop you. I've had a lot of bad leaders. You know what? I ignore the bad leader and I go find a leader. Remember, don't tell me no, tell me how. Don't take no from a leader. Be respectful, move on, and go find somebody that will help you achieve what you're trying to achieve, and then move out of that unit. Find another one, change your MOS or whatever, but don't let those people dictate your future, because I see that a lot. They're like, leadership sucks, the Army sucks, I'm just getting out. No. Don't get out till you got everything you need to succeed on the civilian side. Milk them. Enlisted, they pay for our certifications. At the time, real estate was $1,000 for the class, so they paid for that, but now you can do it on Groupon for $200. It's crazy. So don't waste your certification on that. But if you don't have an extra $200, they will. And then my CAA? My CAA for spouses, they'll pay for that for spouses. There's and if you PCS and you go to a different state, they will pay for you to get those classes to be licensed in that state. They changed that a few years ago. So you got to know these resources that exist. But you won't know those if you don't get out of your comfort zone and go find people to teach you those. So wrapping that back around to that motivation, that passion is, I have a passion to motivate the population that nobody else did when they came up. That they didn't have the mom or the dad or the family saying, you can do it, and here's how to do it, and you can have whatever you want.
I love how you take a question that I asked about your goals, but you turned it into really a servant leadership, if you think about it, right? Guests could come on here and say, yeah, I need to make X amount. I'm going to do X amount of transactions. And it's great to hear that you wrapped it up into really the vocation And that's something personal to me as a real estate professional. Like, you have to believe that you're called to serve, just like you were called to serve in the veteran community. And if you don't think that, then that's why you
can't.
you
can if you don't have that passion. And you know what I say, Brian, is if I help enough people hit their goal, I hit mine regardless, right? So you can't think about me, and serve and live a big life. Now, Jim always tells me if you're not willing to exploit people, you can't be a millionaire or billionaire, because you see these people that are, and they exploit people. Yeah. But you can live a great life not exploiting people. You just exploit the systems out there to help us achieve it.
Love it right there. And, in the real estate world, we're entering, I think, a professional era, the pro era. You see the NAR attacking our character, I think, the NAR lawsuits, that we're greedy or whatever the case is. You see television shows, selling Sunset, really, painting the professional in I think, a poor way. It's entertaining, but at the end of the day, the consumer has that subconsciously. And it's good to see that again, you're wrapping in that vocation. You have a calling to serve. And it just comes right out the mouth. You're just like boom, 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 leveraging the systems. The Army, the military puts it out there, but they're not going to tell you how to do it, because the force is meant for you to stay and serve. But they understand that they do need to provide a system and benefits for you to continue on. And love that you keep re-emphasizing that. And real estate, we are licensed professionals, but there's investors out there. There's so many different ways to get into real estate, not just as licensed professionals. So and that goes into that topic of like the NCO versus officer corps. We go through different paths, and we have different experiences, different certifications, different skill sets that can be applicable to either being a licensed professional, being a construction, being into like the financing side. I mean, there's so many facets out there. So no, I love that you bring up these points. Now, you and I, we could talk all day about this, but where can people talk about what we're talking about with you today? How can they reach out to you?
My husband says I'm too available most often, but our website is pcslpaso.com. My email is chasity@pcslpaso.com, and email me. Let's set a time to talk if that's something you want to do, or you just need a coach and to say, hey, I don't really know where I want to go. And you don't have to do real estate. You can do anything else. But you have to know and go after what you want and create that why. A lot of us think money is the why. Well, we all got to pay our bills and feed our family. But if you dig deeper and you keep asking the why question to get down to it, there's something there that's bigger inside. Some people are even embarrassed to say it because they think it's too big. Well, here's the thing. If nobody's laughing at your why, it's not big enough. And nobody can get to a place without having that, right? Most people say, hey, talking about this building, Lana said to you how many years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that she was going to have her own standalone building. That was a seed she planted. And now y'all have this beautiful building that everybody's walking through like, wow. But what if Lana never had that thought? And she never verbalized it to somebody. They say when you set a goal, you're 76% more likely to achieve it if you write it down. You're like 95% more likely to achieve it if you tell somebody out loud, because it's like an accountability thing, right? Because you don't want to cheat. I keep saying I'm going to law school, and I keep saying it out loud because every time I see somebody out there, they're like, hey, did you start law school yet? And it's a reminder like, no, I didn't. But I can only do it online, so they're just becoming to be popular online. And now my husband's like, now you want to do law school? Yes, I want to do law school. You know why? Because I want to continue to serve military families, get screwed by builders like they did during COVID, dropping their contracts, taking their money, or resell that do the same thing to them, so they have an advocate for them in the real estate world. Like, we're not taking their money.
Wow. I mean, that sums up the title of this podcast, Duty, Honor, Real Estate.
That's it.
And you have that call to action to serve others. And, it's funny, I always wanted someone to do that. And it's so good to hear that. Thank you so much today.
Appreciate y'all so much for this week.
I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. It has been incredible, jam-packed. If I was getting out of the military and I was thinking about real estate, this is who I would call immediately.
Yeah, call me at Bliss. I'm at Bliss.
For Bliss, baby. Anyways, guys, hope to see you at the next episode because it's going to be an exciting one. See you soon.